And now it's time for
a tiny bite
of knowledge. Hey, Sarah, could you send me that shapefile over?
Absolutely. I'll get you that prescription right away.
Sarah,
Yes?
I can't just have the .shp. I need the whole shapefile.
What do you mean, the whole shapefile? Today, on this little tiny bite, we are going to talk about what is a shapefile because we run into this all the time. Jody, what is a shapefile?
A shapefile is a vector file format that's commonly used in GIS and Precision Ag. If you're anybody that does anything with yield data, any sort of Precision Ag stuff, you've probably heard about shapefiles before.
Okay. And often we find shapefiles are handling items then like points, lines, boundaries, polygons, prescriptions, raw yield data. But what really makes up a shapefile?
So there's 4 different files that make up a shapefile. And I think this is the part that gets confusing, right? Because I think typically for us, like non-supercomputer users, we think of a file as being one thing and not other parts. But when it comes to shapefiles, one single shapefile is made up of 4 different files. And I'm just going to list them out, not going to go into detail, but typically these include the .shp, the .shx, the .dbf or the database, and then in some of the newer formats, the .prj or the projection as to where the file is.
That's correct. So the .shp is the actual shapefile, and what that contains is the actual geometry of the object that's getting exported out. The .shx is the shape index format. That is really carrying the positional information for that object. Where is the location of the object? The .dbf contains all of the attribute data. So, for example, that's going to be where the rates for your prescription are held, or your yield data, or the elevation for the topography at each individual point, each individual GPS coordinate. So at that coordinate, this is the attribute value. And the PRJ file is the projection file. In other words, or how on the earth is this object projected? The earth is round. And when we think of maps as flat. And so somehow we have to get that object projected from a flat map onto a round earth. And that is the information that tells the shapefile how it is projected. But I think we need to back up and talk just for a second about the database file, because it really is quite an interesting item in a shapefile. It contains, again, all of the attribute information.
So backing up, what that database file refers to is like if you're working in ADMS and working with a drawing in layer, so a vector file, a shape file like we're discussing here, what you'll notice is that you have the option to look at a database. And so what that database in ADMS is showing is this data here, all of that data that's in the .dbf. If you think about it, it kind of looks like an Excel table, right? You've got columns, you've got rows of data. That's what is in the DBF, is it's telling the vector file what data is located where in the file.
As we know, vector files can have more than one attribute associated with it. And all of those attributes are contained in the database file. Again, that's where you're going to find anything that was logged. For example, you might have as applied planter rate data, along with the prescription that actually went into the controller. You might have elevation data. You might have down pressure data. All of that's going to come in a separate column for each attribute. That is the information that is contained in the database. And the database also contains and will tell you how many polygons are associated with your shapefile as well.
Like we alluded to at the top of the show, it's really important to include all 3 or 4 of these file types when you're moving shapefiles around. If somebody wants a shapefile from you and you only send them one of the 4 file types, for example, if you just send them the .shp, they most likely will not be able to use that file. They need all different file types, all 4 of those file types, the .shp, the .shx, the .dbf, and the .prj, in order to actually use that file.
And they all must be named exactly the same. So be very careful within your software. If you're going to rename one of these files, they absolutely have to have exactly the same name, exactly the same spacing, exactly the same, very case sensitive with the letters as well. So I always rename my shapefiles actually within the ADMS software itself, because that will automatically rename every single file that is associated with that shapefile. But shapefiles are a very powerful way of delivering data and working with data, and a very common file format that we run into in precision agriculture all the time.
And avoid the cussing when you're working with shapefiles, and send all 4 file formats when you're working with them.
With that, at GK Technology, we've got a map
And an app
for that. Tune in next time
for a tiny bite
of knowledge
from GK Technology.
Let the geeks at GK Technology help you with your agricultural data. Their agronomists know agriculture. When it comes to creating soils and zone maps to maximize yields in your fields, you can trust the people with decades of experience in site-specific agriculture. Everyone at GK Technology has a background in agriculture, so they know what makes a farm run, and they speak your language. The geeks at GK Technology have a map and an app for that.